In 1943, a 17-year-old boy in rural Sweden founded a company from his uncle's kitchen table. He sold matches, then fish, then Christmas decorations, then furniture. That boy was Ingvar Kamprad. And the company became IKEA, today the world's largest furniture retailer, in 62 countries, with revenues of €48 billion a year. Here's what almost nobody knows. In the same year Kamprad founded IKEA, 1943, Swedish intelligence opened a secret file on him. The file was stamped in red letters, Nazi. Ingvar Kamprad, age 17, was member number 4014 of the Swedish Nazi Party. He hid it for 50 years. And when the secret finally came out, in 1994, after his Nazi friend died and his private letters became public, what Kamprad said next was even more shocking than the secret itself. This is that story. Ingvar Kamprad was born on the 30th of March, 1926, on a farm called Elmtoryd in Småland, a poor, rural region in southern Sweden. His father was of German origin. His paternal grandmother, Franziska, Fanny, was born in Bohemia, in what is now the Czech Republic. She was the most important adult in Ingvar's childhood. And she was a committed Nazi sympathizer who introduced him, as a young child, to German propaganda magazines. Kamprad was dyslexic, which is why IKEA products have names instead of numbers. He struggled at school. But he was a natural salesman. At 7 years old he was cycling to neighboring farms selling matches he'd bought in bulk in Stockholm. Then fish. Then Christmas tree decorations. Then seeds. By the time he was a teenager he had a small but real business. At 17, in 1943, his father gave him a cash reward for passing his school exams. Kamprad used the money to formally register his company. He named it after himself and his farm, Ingvar Kamprad Elmtoryd Gunneryd. IKEA. In the same year, Ingvar Kamprad joined the Swedish Nazi Party. In 1942, the year before he founded IKEA, Kamprad contacted Per Engdahl. Per Engdahl was the leader of Sweden's fascist movement, a man whose newspaper had, that same year, published articles calling for the extermination of Sweden's Jewish population and defending the Nazi purges in Germany as fully motivated. Kamprad wrote to Engdahl requesting a subscription to his newspaper. A year later, Kamprad joined Engdahl's pro-fascist new Swedish movement, Ny Svenska Rörelsen. And in the same year, 1943, he also enrolled as member number 4014 of Svensk Socialistisk Samling, the Swedish Socialist Unity Party. Sweden's closest equivalent to the Nazi Party. So extreme that it had only recently removed the swastika from its imagery. Swedish intelligence noted both memberships. That's why the file existed. What did Kamprad actually do within these movements? He wasn't a passive member. He recruited. He brought friends into the movement. He hosted fascist meetings at his family farm in Elmtoryd. He donated money. He published one of Engdahl's books at his own expense. And Per Engdahl, the man whose newspaper called for the extermination of Swedish Jews, became one of Kamprad's closest friends. Engdahl was invited to Kamprad's first wedding in 1951. He gave a speech at the ceremony. In their private correspondence, Kamprad and Engdahl called each other BB. Best brother. For 50 years, Kamprad's Nazi past was hidden. IKEA grew. The blue and yellow stores spread across Europe, then the world. Kamprad became one of the wealthiest people on earth. And nobody knew. Then, on the 21st of October 1994, the Swedish newspaper Expressen published a story. Per Engdahl had died that May. His personal correspondence, decades of private letters, had been donated to the Swedish National Archives. And in those letters, Ingvar Kamprad. The evidence was clear. The membership. The recruitment. The wedding invitation. The best brother letters. Kamprad's response was swift. He had to be. He wrote a letter to all IKEA employees, published it publicly, and called his involvement with the fascist movement the greatest mistake of my life. He said he had been young. Influenced by his German grandmother. Politically naive. He asked for forgiveness. And on one level, that might be enough. He was 16 when he first contacted Engdahl. Teenagers make mistakes. Terrible ones. But here's the detail that changes everything. In 1994, Kamprad admitted involvement with the new Swedish movement up to 1948, 3 years after the war ended. In 2011, Swedish journalist Elisabeth Asbrink published a book based on new research and a personal interview with Kamprad. Her findings, his involvement continued at least until the early 1950s. A full decade after the war, and years into his adulthood. And when Asbrink asked Kamprad directly about Per Engdahl in that 2010 interview, Kamprad said, "Per Engdahl was a great man, and I'll maintain that as long as I live. Not regret. Not distance. Not revision." He died in 2018. Those were, on record, his final words about the man whose newspaper called for the extermination of Jews. The Nazi past was one secret. The tax structure was another. In 1973, Ingvar Kamprad left Sweden. He moved to Switzerland. Sweden in the 1970s had some of the highest personal income taxes in the world. The top rate could reach 85%. Kamprad was openly contemptuous of Swedish taxes. He once called tax efficiency a natural part of the company's low-cost culture. He would stay in Switzerland for 40 years. Returning only in 2014, the year his second wife died, to spend his final years in Småland. During those 40 years in Switzerland, Kamprad paid Swedish income tax exactly once. In 2015, for 2014 income, amounting to approximately €640,000. For a man whose wealth was estimated at over €35 billion, that is a remarkable figure. But the personal tax exile was only part of the picture. In 1982, while living in Switzerland, Kamprad performed one of the most sophisticated pieces of corporate engineering in retail history. He gave IKEA away. Not to his family. Not to a business partner. To a Dutch foundation called Stichting INGKA. A charitable foundation based in Leiden, Netherlands, whose stated purpose was to promote innovation in the field of architectural and interior design. On paper, Kamprad no longer owned IKEA. The foundation did. And foundations, in the Netherlands in 1982, paid almost no tax. Were not required to publish their accounts. Could not be taken over. Could not be broken up by heirs. In one legal move, Kamprad had made IKEA effectively immortal. And made himself effectively invisible as its owner. The Economist estimated in 2006 that the foundation was the wealthiest charitable foundation in the world, with an endowment of $36 billion. In that same year, the foundation donated approximately €1 million to a Swedish design institute. The world's richest charity, giving away €1 million a year. Kamprad never found this contradictory. Let me try to explain IKEA's actual ownership structure. Because it matters. At the top sits the Stichting INGKA Foundation in the Netherlands. It owns INGKA Holding BV, the company that operates the large majority of IKEA stores worldwide. The foundation has no shareholders. No one owns it. It owns itself. But that's only half of IKEA. The other half, the brand name, the trademark, the franchise concept, is owned separately. By a company called IKEA Systems. Which was controlled for decades through another foundation, Interogo, based in Liechtenstein. A tax haven inside Europe. Every IKEA store in the world pays IKEA a franchise fee of 3% of turnover just to use the IKEA name. And the money flowing through Liechtenstein? Kamprad himself once called it a piggy bank. Then there's a third entity, the Acano Group. Owned by Kamprad's 3 sons. Based in Luxembourg. Covering financial services, insurance, property. 3 separate structures. 3 separate jurisdictions. Netherlands. Liechtenstein. Luxembourg. All connected. All controlled, in practice, by the Kamprad family, despite none of them being the official owner of anything. Researchers at Copenhagen Business School who studied the structure called it impossible to undo. Kamprad built a system in which IKEA could never be taken over, never be taxed conventionally, never be sold, and would survive him indefinitely. It worked. He died in January 2018. IKEA is still growing. Ingvar Kamprad died on the 27th of January 2018, in his house in Småland. He was 91. He had returned to Sweden for years earlier, after his wife's death. He came back to the farm of his childhood, Elmtoryd, and spent his last years there. The Swedish press gave him a largely respectful farewell. IKEA issued a statement calling him a truly unique entrepreneur who had a great passion for home furnishings. The stores ran a small tribute in their catalogs. The Nazi past was mentioned. Briefly. As context. As something acknowledged and apologized for. But here's the question that Swedish journalist Elisabeth Asbrink, who had interviewed Kamprad in 2010, who had researched him more deeply than anyone, says was never properly answered. Did Kamprad ever actually change? He apologized in 1994. He said it was the greatest mistake of his life. And in 2010, when asked about the man whose movement had called for the extermination of Jews, he said, Per Engdahl was a great man, and I'll maintain that as long as I live. Those two statements cannot both be true. Either the apology was genuine and the 2010 statement was the confused remark of an old man who had spent too long romanticizing the friendships of his youth. Or the apology was the performance, and the 2010 statement was the truth. Kamprad took the answer with him. What he left behind is more complicated. IKEA employs 220,000 people. It has made affordable, well-designed furniture accessible to hundreds of millions of families. The company he built from a kitchen table in Småland is, by any measure, one of the most significant businesses of the 20th century. And its founder was, by any honest measure, a more complicated man than the stores suggest. That contradiction, between what someone builds and what they believe, is one of the most uncomfortable questions in business history. And there's no flat-pack instruction manual for assembling the answer. Next week on this channel, the story of a British retailer that wasn't killed by Amazon, or by fast fashion, or by the internet. It was killed in a single week, by one man, who stole its pension fund. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And I want to know, does knowing this change how you feel about IKEA? Drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious, and I genuinely don't know what the right answer is.